I like using different kinds of decorative stitches on my pieces that I create as wall hangings, or you can use it on your quilts. I like to put something in between the fabric layers. So you have your front piece and you have your back piece here, and I like to put a low loft cotton batting in between. I find when I'm stitching it just feels a little bit nicer, and it gives it a little bit of texture when you stitch into it. So I'll leave it up to you. You can definitely do this type of stitching without having batting in between, but I find it's just a little nice added touch. I'm using our wood hair markers to create a kind of mark so that it will guide me when I'm stitching. You can also use kind of like a water-soluble pen. Whatever you have on hand is fine. I'm going to start by just kind of creating a circular shape. And you can push down with the hair marker to create your lines. And what I like about using this tool is that if you make a mistake and you don't like the mark, you can just wet the cloth and then the line will disappear. And I have some safety pins that kind of just hold the layers together while I'm stitching. Okay, so that's the first step, is just to kind of give yourself a bit of a guideline, and I'll probably create two sort of smaller shapes here. And they don't have to be complete circles, they can kind of go off the edge. When you're creating this stitch, you can use whichever size thread that you want. You might want your stitches to have like a more thin, delicate look, or you might want it to have more of a chunky look, so you might want to go with almost like a yarn. The two choices that I always kind of go towards is like a cotton embroidery floss, or this top stitching thread that is used for quilting. This is made by a company called Wonderfil. I'll put a link below in the description. It's a Canadian company, and this thread is called Spaghetti, and the color that I'm using is 23. So SP23 is the color that I'm using for this. And they come in lots of different colors. There's this yellow color that I really like as well. Even just sort of neutrals like a cream. So they come in lots of different colors. And it's my favorite to use for top stitching. To start, I went through from the back there, and there's the knot. And then the start is here, and I'm right at the edge of my drawn line. And you want to go right beside it, I would say about 1/4 of an inch or however wide you want to do it. And then you also want to go up. And then you are going to thread it through like this. And then you're going to go beside it the same distance of the stitch and pull it up. And what you want to do is make sure that the thread, the loop of thread is at the top here. So when you're stitching, you make sure your needle is above that thread, and then you just pull. That way you're not wrapping the thread around the needle. And it just makes it a lot faster. And you can make these stitches big or small, however you want to, what kind of stitch you want to create. A little bit of a knot there. And you can see that you're essentially creating like a blanket stitch. I'm going to go around and do my first rotation, and the idea is that when you're doing this stitch, you're going around and then you're going to do another layer, and you're just going to keep going around until you get into the center. And this is what it looks like on the back. You can see that I'm almost at the end of this first rotation. I'm going to show you how I finish off this circle. And I'm slowly running out of thread, so I'm going to show you how I stop and start. So I have probably enough room to do one more stitch right here. And you could see that this one here wasn't like a full stitch. So I'm going to take my needle and go underneath it like this. You could see now that it's a full stitch. And I'm going to go down and stitch that corner like so. Then I'm going to turn it over, and then I'm going to just grab a little piece of thread like this, create a loop, stick my needle in the loop, and then I'm going to snip this off and then grab another length of thread, and then start again and show you how I do that. I've got a new length of thread on my needle, and I'm going to do the next layer. And what you want to do is you want your stitches to be in between, so it should be right there in the middle. And what I'm going to do is come up from the back, and I want to be just below that stitch there, and come up. And you're going to do the exact same thing. So when you go to the next space, you're going to go in between there, and then you're going to come up. And you're going to again get this sort of triangular shape, which we're going to fix when we do the last stitch. And you're going to go around and do another rotation. And essentially what you're doing is you're just going to keep going around and around until the full circle is filled. So I'm going to keep going around and doing this, and then when I get to a point where I have to change threads and I'm in the middle of a stitch, I'll come back and show you how I do that. I'm getting low on my thread. You could see that on the needle, and I created one last stitch. You could see that it's not completely secured, and what I do is I pull this up, and then just where that thread is coming up, I go back down with my needle and pull on it. You could see as I pull on it, it makes that stitch square-ish. And then I will flip this over and then just do a finishing knot. I'm going to get a new piece of thread. I find an arm's length is a good length for thread because when it's too long, it gets really knotted. I'm going to flip it back to the front. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to go right back in that corner where I finished off my stitch, just kind of on the inside. Pull it up and then just continue with my stitching. So that's how I kind of stop when I'm in the middle of a row. And this is what it looks like on the back. It's just a bunch of tails and knots. I wanted to point out something because as you get into the smaller areas of the circle, the stitch width is going to get a little bit harder, and I wanted to show you what I do sometimes. So as you can see, the next stitch would be like right here, but instead of what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip this one and then go right to this one, just so that I can maintain the angle of when it's starting to curve. So it will look like that, because I want to avoid having too thin of a stitch. And the next one is okay to kind of go right into the next stitch. So you might find that you might have to skip a stitch, which is fine. And I kind of like the way it looks too. I'm approaching the end of the row here, and as I'm looking at the design, you know, don't feel like you have to fill it completely. Like, I really like how there's a little bit of, you know, the fabric showing there, and you can decide as you do the different circles, maybe some are filled and then some are not filled all the way. I'll just finish this so you can see how it looks. Yeah, I like the way it looks. Just a little bit of the fabric showing on this one. I might leave it for now, and then if I find that I want to fill it in, it's not difficult to do. I'm going to continue and start filling some of the other ones around here, and then it'll give me a better idea on how to kind of move forward. I wanted to show you some of the progression. I started on this circle here, and I'm going to do another row, and I'm going to leave the center undone, but these smaller ones, I think I'm going to fill them all completely. And I just wanted to kind of show you the progression and how it looks when you know, start adding some more stitch lines. And I'll show you how it looks when I'm all finished. On this small one, I'm going right to the center. And it does get a little bit trickier because it gets a little tighter and you're running out of space. So I'm doing that there, and then just doing a stitch over here. Now at this point, I could stop and just leave that little bit of a hole, or I could just try to mimic the stitch itself. To close it off completely. So I could do something like that just to kind of add some more stitching. Here's the piece with all the stitching completed. I hope you give this blanket stitch a try and play around with the different shapes and colors. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.